In a bold and provocative display of power, China's military is escalating its presence near Taiwan, raising questions about its ultimate intentions. Over the past 24 hours, Taiwan's defense ministry reported the detection of 92 Chinese naval ships and 47 military aircraft operating in an expanded zone that extends beyond Taiwan's perimeter into the broader Pacific Ocean. The formation of Chinese forces resembles two strategic walls, one circling Taiwan and another breaching the first island chain, a critical line of defense that stretches from Japan through Taiwan and the Philippines. The message is clear. Beijing intends to dominate the Taiwan Strait and challenge the international status quo. Taiwanese officials have labeled the maneuvers as training exercises, but their scope and intensity suggest more than routine drills. Analysts note that such operations could rapidly escalate into fire drills or, worse, an outright conflict. This development coincides with President Lei Ching-te's recent visit to Hawaii and Guam, where he engaged with U.S. congressional leaders, further aggravating Beijing. The breach of the first island chain marks a significant shift in China's military strategy, suggesting that Beijing is not merely focused on Taiwan, but is also signaling its ability to challenge U.S. dominance in the Pacific. The first island chain has long served as a defensive barrier against Chinese expansion. By crossing it, China is flexing its ability to project power far beyond its traditional sphere of influence. This escalation raises critical questions about Washington's response. Can the U.S. afford to maintain its policy of strategic ambiguity, or is a more direct approach required? China's growing confidence poses a stark challenge to international norms and underscores the fragility of peace in the region. In a dramatic turn of events in the Western Pacific, the United States has deployed 3 aircraft carrier strike group response to China's escalating military activities near Taiwan. With tensions reaching new heights, the USS Carl Vinson, USS Abraham Lincoln, and USS George Washington are now strategically positioned to counter any aggressive moves by Beijing. Among these, 16 Chinese aircraft crossed the sensitive median line, penetrating Taiwan's southwest air defense identification zone (AD zone. The unprecedented scale of operations suggests a calculated move to pressure Taipei and test the resolve of the U.S. and its allies. At the same time, Beijing has declared restricted airspace zones in the East China Sea near Zhejiang and Fujian, further heightening regional alertness. Taiwan has responded with tactical drills and missile deployment, signaling readiness for any potential escalation. In response to the threat from the Chinese Navy, the United States chose to deploy 3 aircraft carriers, marking a rare and significant show of force. The USS Carl Vinson is conducting exercises in the Philippine Sea east of Taiwan, including carrier-based flight operations and replenishment exercises. The aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln has withdrawn from the South China Sea and is heading toward the waters southwest of Taiwan. The aircraft carrier USS George Washington is stationed in Yokosuka, Japan, serving as an important base of operations and containing the movements of China's Northern Navy. This military positioning goes beyond routine patrols, signaling Washington's readiness to confront China's growing assertiveness. Critics argue this move risks turning the Western Pacific into a flashpoint for potential conflict. China's deployment of advanced naval vessels, including the Type Zhou 52D destroyer Dezhou and Type 54A frigate Zhou, into the Pacific through the Miyako Strait has raised alarms. Beijing is not only flexing its military muscles, but also gathering critical intelligence for potential future confrontations. China aligned with its long-term goal of asserting dominance over the first island chain and deterring foreign interference in Taiwan. Unlike the United States, China also regards aircraft carriers as the key to maritime dominance. But China's aircraft carriers play a secondary but cunning role. These aircraft carriers operate within the so-called Anti-Access Area Denial Bubble, avoiding direct confrontation with U.S. naval power and instead serving as intimidation tools within the first island chain. China hopes to use supersonic anti-ship missile systems, drones, and surveillance networks to create a nearly impenetrable barrier that would force U.S. aircraft carriers to keep a distance, undermining traditional notions of U.S. naval power projection. This strategy flipped the script on naval warfare. China does not need to confront the U.S. Navy head-on. The Chinese hope to keep the Americans at a far enough distance to achieve the goal of allowing Taiwan to surrender without a fight. The U.S. strategy is to project force through 3 Nimitz-class aircraft carriers. China's Liaoning and Shandong are mainly refurbished and imitated, while the Soviet Navy's Marshal Kuznetsov-class aircraft carriers are relatively outdated. The 3rd and 4th aircraft carriers that the Chinese are about to build are still designed to be conventionally powered. This means that the Chinese Navy needs to risk excessively long supply lines and wired navigation capabilities in the hope of achieving the effect of blocking Taiwan. The first island chain, a region stretching from Pan through Taiwan and down to the Philippines, is where the true stakes lie. For Beijing, control over this zone means unchallenged access to its sphere of influence and a significant deterrent to U.S. military intervention. If we allow China to militarize the first island chain without consequences, we are surrendering the Indo-Pacific to authoritarian control, declared a U.S. military spokesperson. This has led to a precarious situation, where U.S. aircraft carriers operate just outside the range of China 280 systems, constantly probing for weaknesses. A simple and effective strategy is to expose China's coastal naval bases to devastating firepower from the United States. This made it difficult for the Chinese Navy to replenish the Navy and automatically lifted the blockade. In an unprecedented escalation in the Western Pacific, China has launched a bold naval offensive targeting U.S. aircraft carrier strike groups. This aggressive move has triggered a swift and devastating response from the United States, with carrier-launched bombers striking key Chinese naval bases, forcing Beijing's fleet into disarray. Reports indicate that Chinese forces attempted a coordinated assault using hypersonic missiles and drone swarms, signaling Beijing's intent to push the U.S. out of its self-proclaimed territorial waters. However, the U.S. Navy responded with overwhelming force. FQA-18 Super Hornets from the carriers launched precision strike Chinese naval installations in Fujian and Zhejiang provinces, crippling key logistical hubs. Satellite images suggest massive damage to docks, airstrips, and fuel depots, leaving China's naval command scrambling. Tensions, long simmering, boiled over into outright conflict as China's naval forces, bolstered by destroyers, frigates, and electronic warfare vessels, engaged with the USS Carl Vinson and USS Abraham Lincoln in the Philippine Sea. The USS Carl Vinson, a symbol of U.S. naval might, moves into the Indo-Pacific theater armed with the cutting-edge F-35 fighter jets. Their mission, to neutralize the rising threat of China's naval dominance. The F-35, with its unmatched stealth and strike capabilities, threatens to disrupt Beijing's naval ambitions. F-35 streaking across the Chinese fleet, targeting Chinese destroyers with surgical precision. The most shocking development came as the People's Liberation Army Navy's much-touted Shandong aircraft carrier retreated under relentless pressure. According to unconfirmed reports, the Shandong suffered critical damage from missile strikes launched by U.S. forces, effectively neutralizing its combat capabilities. Analysts suggest this marks a devastating setback for China's ambitions to project power beyond the first island chain. The dismantling of the Shandong task group has forced Chinese commanders to scatter their fleet into smaller, vulnerable formations, losing the cohesion necessary for effective operations. Meanwhile, Taiwan remains on high alert as both sides continue to deploy forces dangerously close to its territory. Regional allies, including Japan and Australia, have expressed support for U.S. actions, but fear that the conflict could spiral into a full-scale war involving multiple nations. Computers show that there's a probability of up to 73% that the U.S. fleet can effectively break the blockade and deployment of the Chinese Navy after effectively raiding the naval bases along the Chinese coast while controlling the losses of its own aircraft. But among them, there is also a chilling situation, and that is Taiwan's loyalty. Even today, as many as 1/3 of the people in Taiwan want to be reunited with China and oppose U.S. interference. This makes U.S. military analysts worry whether Taiwan will surrender without a fight under China's huge pressure, or even launch a revolution on the island to overthrow the existing Taiwanese independence-leaning government. If this happens, if Beijing pressures Taiwan into submission, the repercussions could paralyze operations across the first and second island chains. Taiwan's direct surrender would be the ultimate weapon to shatter the United States' naval dominance in the Indo-Pacific region. If Taiwan opens its ports to allow Chinese ships to take refuge and resupply on site during the Sino-US aircraft carrier war, even if we deploy 3 aircraft carriers, it will still be difficult to win in the end. This is why Trump has always refused to commit to defending Taiwan, although the United States has always been Taiwan's unswerving protector.